Lena Banks, certified financial planning professional and small business coach based here in Austin, Texas. Welcome back to your financial therapy for the week. Thanks as always for tuning in. Before we get started, I need to ask you if you've been enjoying the show, please like, subscribe, give us a review wherever you're listening or watching, or just keep downloading. That's great too. I really appreciate all of that. So today's episode is kind of an interesting one. I've heard this a lot in financial coaching with couples, and the question is to commingle or not to commingle your finances. So I give you today 4 questions to ask yourself and talk through with your partner to help you decide. And, it's really interesting. I've seen all sorts of commingling relationships with money. I've seen, we pay bills from a joint account and we each put in the same amount to that account and then we pay all of our bills that way. I've seen he pays the mortgage, I pay the car payment, and we split up kind of the rest of the financial responsibilities. I've seen everything goes into one pot and what's mine is yours, and we just go from there. And I've seen nothing is commingled whatsoever, and each month we basically pay bills exactly down the middle. Maybe one person is responsible for paying all the bills, but then they get 50% of that back from their partner. So I've seen all different versions of that. You could also work it to be some level of proportional payment, especially if one partner in the financial relationship makes significantly more than the other, or there's some sort of job loss or something like that happening within the relationship. There are so many different ways to make this happen, and for every scenario that I've just described, I've seen it work, and I've also seen it fail. And unless there's financial abuse or infidelity at play, all of these scenarios are about boundaries and negotiation. It's also less about whether you're married or not, but obviously if you are married, you should definitely be asking these questions that I'll give you, because as your marriage goes, it depends on it. Usually finances are number one on the list of marital problems, and it's a lot harder to cut your losses and leave the relationship if you're married. Not that cohabitating is not equally as serious when it comes to navigating these financial issues. So this episode, as I said, is to commingle or not to commingle. And the first question that I think will help you to decide how and when to make those decisions is, what is your and your partner's money mindset? So we did an episode a while back. It's one of kind of our foundational episodes, and if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it, because learning these money mindsets and kind of what yours are, and then also what your partners are super important to just understanding your partner more financially. So minimizers tend to have a low risk tolerance. Money is only a means to an end. Maximizers tend to have a higher risk tolerance. They seek the highest yields possible, and they also might go through more risk in order to earn more money. Savers value security, predictability. Investors value spending money on worthy priorities, but maybe are less likely to kind of tuck money away on a regular basis. Responders are more reactive in meeting financial needs and challenges, and directors are more proactive about researching, communicating, and planning around finances, but they might not be so quick to respond to something that is coming down the pike. So minimizer, maximizer, saver, investor, responder, director. It's really important that I stop here and say that there's not a right way to be. For every one of these mindsets, there's a strength, and there's also a corresponding weakness. So, embodying one of these mindsets, you might think, oh yeah, I'm a saver. But if you're saving and then you're never investing in the next thing, you're never moving yourself forward, that can be detrimental to your financial health. And similarly, if you're an investor, but you invest and often lose those dollars, that can be detrimental to your financial health. So, like I said, there's no right or wrong for these. It is just what it is. And if you trend more toward one of these dynamics than the other, it's really important that you understand that for yourself, but that your financial partner also understands kind of who you are in that space. The key really is understanding yourself, understanding what your mindsets are, and then not letting your emotions guide you and get you into a funk or get you into clashes with your partner around those money mindsets. You don't want the dissonance that you may have with your partner to start dictating your money moves. So being guided by your emotions isn't always bad. Sometimes when we're obligated towards something, it's because we're responsible. It's because we are accountable. We're good stewards of our dollars. But you don't want to be guided by your emotions 100% of the time. You certainly don't want to be guided by your emotions in a sense that you're reacting negatively to something that's happening to you instead of seeing where the opportunities are to make an appropriate financial decision for you because you've actually talked it through with your partner. So that's the first question, is what are your and your partner's money mindsets? The second question is, what's their origin story? So who are they when it comes to money? How did they grow up when it comes to money? What did they learn from their parents? What did they see growing up that they were taught about money? Did it come easily? Did they feel very secure and safe around money? Or was it like a constant kind of lack around finances? If you're in the mentality of, man, we always had to work really, really hard and there was just never enough, that is going to trail into their adult life. And it's not even necessarily a bad thing, obviously, to feel that you need to work for your money. But if that kind of scarcity is prevalent in their childhood, that's something that you want to know about as an adult living with them, commingling your finances with them, because that is going to shift some of how they deal with money, how they work with money, one way or another. They might get dollars and then immediately spend them because they're not quite used to having money to manage and maintain. Or they might get money and be like, okay, I'm putting every penny away because you never know, saving for a rainy day. So knowing their origin story, knowing how they grew up with money and how that affects how they spend and earn money as an adult is super important if you're going to consider commingling your finances with someone. So I didn't mention this, but one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up this episode is because I saw this article. It was actually kind of like a Dear Abby type thing called The Moneyest on Market Watch. And Quentin Futrell, for lack of a better metaphor, is Abby in this situation. And so this mom had written into Quentin to say that she was really upset about her son getting into debt and messing up his credit because he was paying for his girlfriend's weight loss medications. And, she attributed it to that. And I can see why. I think at the time she cited that it was like $1,000 a month and that he had just been pouring money into this girl, and the mom was like super annoyed because he had completely messed up his credit and all of this stuff. She does later go on to say that, oh yeah, he's finally built himself back up. So it obviously wasn't like a death blow for him, but she was super annoyed that at this woman because the narrative was this woman forced my son to spend all of this money on something that's just for her. And, this goes back to kind of the money mindsets conversation. It's like, well, from his perspective, he might have thought that this was an investment in their relationship, an investment in her personal well-being. You never know. I would definitely counsel against going into debt in order to pay for something like this, especially when it's not for you personally, and it doesn't sound like it was something that was medically necessary, but you never know. It's hard to read that deeply into, a Dear Abby type letter that's coming in. But what that letter made me think was, man, this guy just did not have these conversations with his financial partner before commingling their finances, before going to the place where he is spending money on something that might not actually be in his best interest, as well as his partner's. And so understanding his partner's money mindset and her origin story, the idea that, maybe she is very loosey-goosey with dollars and is used to being taken care of, is used to, being kind of coddled, quote unquote, in that sort of way. Maybe she never had to worry about money. Or maybe it's the complete opposite. Maybe she is really struggling and this is something that would be wonderful for her mental health and well-being, and the son recognized that and was like, I am willing to sacrifice a little bit to make sure that she's in a good place. So, not knowing completely what their situation is, it's just really important to get to the bottom of that first before we start passing judgment on people, I think. Of course, this was the mom of the son, so from her perspective, the woman is the devil. But I think it was very telling because it kind of leads into the third question that I think they should have been asking themselves, and it doesn't seem like they were likely to have asked themselves, which is, do we have the same financial goals, and have we discussed and agreed on them? And the only way you can do that is to know what your financial goals actually are, which, believe it or not, is very difficult for a lot of people. So, for her financial goals might have been, man, I really need to save some money. I don't have any money to spend on these GLP-1s. My boyfriend can pay for them. Oh, great. He has a good job. He is financially capable, He might go into a little debt, but he's probably going to be good. And then from her perspective, she is able to meet her financial goals on her end. But it doesn't sound like to me that was a conversation that they had where they said, what are our financial goals? What is it that we value spending our money on? Because if you don't have those shared goals and financial values, commingling isn't going to work out very well, no matter how you do it, no matter how that works itself out. The idea that if you haven't discussed, hey, I don't have the money for this particular thing, but I value it as something that I'd like to spend on, how much could you possibly help me with? I'm willing to do this amount, or I'm able to do this amount. Could you subsidize this for me? That might have been a conversation that they had. You never know. But it doesn't sound like that's something that they discussed in depth, or else I would guess that this mom would have gotten a little bit of that conversation from her son, because ultimately that conversation allows you to set boundaries. If the son had had that conversation, he's not only able to then set boundaries with the girlfriend and say, you know what, this is what I could afford to help you with, this is what I could subsidize, or hey, by the way, I can't spend any money on that for you, but what I can do is make sure that the rent is always paid or our mortgage is always paid. And so, it's that level of compromise that I think needs to happen, and that can only happen if you're actually having the conversations about it and then setting adequate boundaries. So he could have set boundaries with the girlfriend, and also he could have set boundaries with this mother. It sounds to me like he didn't necessarily know what his own financial goals were, and so he's not able to just say, you know what, Mom, she needed this, I was comfortable paying for it. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have gone into debt paying for it, and I should have definitely paid more attention to my credit and my credit worthiness, but this was something that I agreed to do, and I'm confident and comfortable with that because it meets my financial values, it meets our shared goals, and that's how I chose to move forward. So, you know, it really is best to keep, if you're not comfortable making that budget together, having that conversation, it probably is best to keep things separate until you are comfortable having that talk and then deciding together how you'll move forward with anything that you agree on, but the things that you fundamentally don't agree on. And if it's, you know, something that you agree on, like the need to pay rent or mortgage or buy groceries, then to me, it's those things are much easier to have a conversation about, set your goals together, and move forward on, and not worry about whatever judgment comes from that after the fact, right? So, budgets are boundaries. This guy probably needed to own his financial values and goals a little bit more and set some boundaries, not just with his girlfriend, but also with his mom around his finances. So, first question, what's your and your partner's money mindset? Second question, what's your origin story? How'd you grow up dealing with money? Third question, what are your financial goals and values? And the final question to ask yourself to help you decide when and how to commingle your finances is, what are my motivations? Is it that I feel obligated to do this? Is it that I feel guilty? Is it that I feel like I need to show off? Is it that I feel weak, helpless? Like I'll never be able to take care of myself. And so I really need somebody to swoop in and kind of save me from myself. All of those things are obviously not good reasons to commingle finances. Really, if you're looking at any of the four horsemen, as I've called them, of personal finance, if any of those are your motivating factors, if you're doing it because you want this person to lean on you heavily, maybe you are in a space where you feel like the only resource you have to give is your finances. Maybe you're in a space where you feel like, as I said, like you personally cannot take care of yourself, and so you need this person to come in and sweep you off your feet to the degree that they are managing the finances. Or maybe it's that you think that the other person is going to be incapable of taking care of themselves. None of those are good reasons to commingle. So, as I said, the son might not have had his own financial goals, and vacuums tend to eat money. So, you know, her needs and her desires could have filled that space. And, you know, I've said it before, when we have money, if we don't have a plan for how to spend it, how to save it, how to invest it, then it gets eaten away by lots of things. There are so many things that you could spend money on, so many things that can become priorities in the absence of true priorities, that it's really important to understand what your motivations are for commingling those dollars. What is your reasoning behind doing what you're doing? And if it's not, going back to question 3, if it's not because you have shared financial goals and values, then you need to take a pause and maybe not commingle to the degree that you are abandoning your own well-being in order to cater to somebody else's. So he could have felt uncomfortable saying no because he doesn't have a budget, he doesn't know how to set boundaries. Or maybe he felt like it was his role to provide for her. And so, here's all of these dollars, which I think is kind of inexplicable because it doesn't sound like they were married. It doesn't sound like, he was necessarily like the only one working. So there is kind of a give and take here that I think is really important. And if your motivating factor is, well, if I don't do this, they're going to leave me. If I don't do this, they're going to be upset. If I don't do this, then they'll think I really don't love them. I mean, all of those things are just like really bad reasons to spend money and certainly to commingle your dollars with somebody else. So maybe he felt like she really needed it, and that's definitely okay, but it still is his boundary to set based on his own budget and his own ability to pay bills and to keep himself financially healthy and well. And so if he's not doing that, that really is on him. These 4 horsemen of personal finance are certainly factors that affect everybody, but they are ours to manage. And so to me, that's on him as much as it is on her that he ended up going into debt and, losing his creditworthiness as a result. So, side note here, if you do ever feel more manipulated than consulted about finances, that's a huge red flag. And certainly if you're feeling fearful about what will happen if you don't go along with paying for something, that's a huge red flag. That's not healthy. It's not okay. And we should all check ourselves on that. If you're feeling that way, you should be able to have these conversations with your financial partner and ask these questions so that you're both feeling financially secure and comfortable. So this has been to commingle or not to commingle, 4 questions to help decide. And the first one was, what's your and your partner's money mindset? The second question is, what's their origin story? The third is, do we have the same financial goals and values? And finally, what are our motivations for commingling our dollars? So thanks so much for listening this week, and I will be back next week with another episode.